Hey everyone, Luke Cook from SSW TV, and I've dragged Matt Goldman along to show us how easy it is to get started with .NET MAUI, having never written any sort of mobile app development in my life. Matt, you are here to prove that me, a lowly .NET developer, can actually start doing some mobile app development fairly quickly. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with what do I need before I can start writing some MAUI code?
You need the .NET MAUI workloads, which are part of .NET 6. They'll be in .NET 7 as well. The easiest way to install those is with Visual Studio.
Okay.
So I've got the Visual Studio installer here running on Mac OS.
Yep, that's my first red flag. Is it exactly the same on Windows?
It looks slightly different, but the process is the same.
Okay.
So you open the Visual Studio installer and you make sure that you've got the .NET MAUI workload installed, or install it if not. In fact, I happen to see this running on your Visual Studio installer on your Windows laptop, and you are ready to go already. You could run .NET MAUI apps right now.
Oh, right, okay. This is what happens when you just tick everything on the install, right?
That's right, yeah. So you don't need anything special. It's just, the easiest way, as I said, is to do it as part of Visual Studio. Very recently, this has come out of preview, the .NET MAUI tooling. So up until probably a couple of weeks ago, you would have had to have a preview version of Visual Studio on Mac or on Windows. Right now, it's in the standard Visual Studio installer.
17.3 or whatever that came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, so you just make sure that you've got the .NET MAUI workload installed.
Yep.
Once you've got that, you can come to your very standard .NET MAUI new project screen. Again, slightly different to Windows, but basically the principles are the same. You have a list of here's my recent projects.
So you go File, New Project, right?
So I go New.
Yep.
And then because my recently used templates here are all .NET MAUI, because that's what I'm doing at the moment. But you can scroll down here and you can see that there's under multi-platform app, I can choose those, and I've got all the .NET MAUI templates here as well. On Windows, you've got a little search box at the top, so you could start typing MAUI, and that will filter down to these. But you can see that we've got a few options here. We've got .NET MAUI app, which is what we're going to look at. You've got .NET MAUI Blazor app.
Okay.
I can see you're excited about that.
I am, yes.
We're gonna talk about that later.
All right, sure.
Okay. You can create a .NET MAUI class library. This is my own template for creating .NET MAUI apps. This is here to support my book, basically.
Right.
So we don't need to worry about that too much. So if you're going to do a brand new .NET MAUI app, you're going to choose this one right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go continue. .NET 6. .NET 6 is the minimum requirement for .NET MAUI, so it doesn't run on .NET 5, doesn't run on .NET Core. It does run on .NET 7, but of course .NET 7 is still preview. So, but if I had that running here, I could choose .NET 7. This is all very similar to the Windows process. And then of course, you've got to choose a name. So we go hello world. Shall I go hello Luke?
Go hello Matt.
Hello Matt.
Hello Matt.
I've never written an app to say hello to myself before. This is a first for me. I should do this more often. So again, this is the same as what you'd have on Windows. You'd give it create, and then we have a .NET MAUI app. That's it.
Oh my God, what's this Solution Explorer on the left-hand side business?
Solution Explorer is on the left-hand side in Mac OS.
Oh, right, okay.
In Visual Studio for Mac. I haven't done that myself. Think of it as being like VS Code.
Yeah, right.
Of course, on VS Code, you can move it to the other side if you want.
Well, you can't in this one?
You can't in this one.
Right.
Visual Studio for Windows, you could move it to this side if you wanted as well. Yes. But I haven't figured out how to do it in Visual Studio for Mac.
All right.
Maybe you can do it. I don't know.
Okay, so this is our .NET MAUI app, and the first thing it opens is a XAML page.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So
immediately lost.
Yeah. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the XAML right now, because we're going to talk about that more later on.
Okay.
So XAML, it stands for Extensible Application Markup Language, and it is basically just like HTML, it's an XML-based markup language for letting you arrange UI elements on screen using XML. Right. We're going to talk about that more later. What I really want to show you is how this app is bootstrapped and how the .NET MAUI platform works. So if you look over here, you can see we've got a file called mauiprogram.cs. If I open this up, You'll see that what this has is the generic host builder pattern here.
Oh yeah, that looks very familiar.
Yeah,
Yep.
This is, you should recognize this from ASP.NET development, or from even .NET console apps use this same kind of approach now. It's the generic host builder pattern. We've got a builder with a Fluent API. I could, of course, at the end we're returning builder.build, but I could go in here and I could start registering services. So I could go builder.services.add singleton, add scope, what have you. So you've got DI built into this the same as you do with any other .NET app. Yep. It really is very, very comfortable and very familiar for .NET developers.
Immediately into a space that I recognize, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing scary here like in the .NET code.
No.
Right.
No,
okay.
Exactly. And you'll see that what you might see that's different here to what you would see in an ASP.NET Core app is this line here where it says use MAUI app.
Yeah.
And there we're passing in a type of app. You'll see here that we've got an app.xaml. We're going to talk about this more later, but this has all these XAML files here have a code behind.
Okay.
So this app that's being passed here in this is this app.xaml.cs class.
And this is our entry point, is it?
Yeah.
This is like our main function. Yep.
Yeah. And you'll see that this inherits from this type of application, which has a property called main page. So when your app starts, it's gonna launch whatever is allocated to this main page. Now, the reason I have my own template that you saw earlier is that it was the blank one, is because this one is using Shell, which I don't really want to talk about too much now, but Shell is a tool that's part of .NET MAUI that lets you arrange the visual and navigational hierarchy of your app in XAML.
Right, okay.
So if we have a
Which
look,
you don't like using? Is that why you have your blank template?
it's not that I don't like using it. I actually do like using it, but it's not for everyone. And I don't want to have to, when I'm teaching someone MAUI, I don't want to have the conversation that we just had and start explaining what Shell is. I'd rather build up to it.
Okay, so for someone like me, I probably don't really care about this shell at this point in time. I can just F5 from here and start building, can I?
You can, but what I'm going to do, just to make this a little bit easier, another thing that you'll see here is we've got this main page.xaml. That's an actual page.
Yep.
Now we don't really care about organizing the navigational hierarchy of our app because we've only got one page. Correct. So I'm just going to get rid of shell. We're not going to use it. And what this shell is going to do is it's just going to bootstrap the main page anyway. So I'm just going to cut out the middleman and I'm going to go main page. So just to make it confusing, application has a property called main page of type content page. It's a type that's in .NET MAUI, and we're assigning it an actual class that's actually called main page. So,
but it could be called anything.
It could be called anything, and that's this file that opened automatically when we got the template created for us. And this is the XAML. This is the code behind. So what's going to happen now is .NET MAUI is going to go through MAUI program to the type of app. App is going to launch. It's got a property called main page assigned to its main page, and when we run it. Again, I'm not going to go through the XAML here, but you can see that we've got some things arranged in a vertical stack. We've got an image, some labels, and a button.
Well, F5 it. Show me what it looks like.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
So this is now running, it says up here on my Mac. I could run this using an iOS simulator. I could run it on the Android emulator. Having some problems with the Android emulator on my Mac at the moment.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll show you on Windows how it runs on Windows and on Android.
Okay.
We could do that later, but I could run this on Mac OS. I could run it.
Can you just plug your phone straight in as well and run it like natively on your phone?
You could. You don't even have to because you can do it wirelessly.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. Of course, you had that with Xamarin as well.
So there's no difference here with using it on Mac OS or Windows. I still have the same debugging options across both platforms?
On Mac OS, you can debug and run your app on Android, Mac, and iOS.
Yeah.
But not Windows.
Okay.
On Windows, you can debug on Windows, iOS, and Android, but not Mac OS.
Why do we got to fight, guys? Yeah. Why do we got to fight?
Yeah. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that while you can write this and run it on different platforms, you can't publish an iOS or Mac OS MAUI app from Windows, and you can't publish a Windows app from Mac OS. So, if you want to truly, develop these across all those different platforms, you or your team need to have access to all those different devices. Of course, there's another way of doing it, which is using build agents in your CI/CD pipelines.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can get around it that way.
You can get around it that way, but
right, sure.
if you want to be able to test it, like we're going to do now, because as you can see, our .NET MAUI app is now launched, and we've got the output running here in the background. But I'm just going to switch back to documents here, and then just bring this back in front of it. So, as I said, we've got a vertical stack. We've got an image at the top, then a label underneath that says "Hello World," and then we've got a label underneath that says "Welcome to Multi-Platform App UI," and then a button. And if I click it, like it says "Click me," we can see that it's saying clicked X number of times. We can look at the logic for how that's being done here. This is just C# code that you should be able to just see straight away and understand.
I can?
Yeah.
So has it got hot reloading?
Has it got hot reloading? It's a good question you should ask. It does, because it's .NET 6, and .NET 6 has hot reload built right into .NET.
Right, so we can change this on counter clicked method then and have it recompile and...
Let's do something simple first. So you wanted this to say "Hello Matt." Let's change it from "Hello World" to "Hello Matt," and I should be able to bring this back, and you can see straight away that's changed right
nice.
there.
Okay.
With regard to your next question, .NET Hot Reload, we could change the content of this method, but we can't change the method signature, and we can't add or remove any methods or add or remove any classes.
No.
But that's nothing to do with .NET MAUI. That's the way that .NET Hot Reload works. And it's to do with the way that the IL has basically a directory of all your methods and classes and all that sort of stuff. So if you change that directory, your app has to be rebuilt.
Right, but we could change that from count ++ to count -, and hot reload will work just fine.
We could, yeah. I can do that right now if you want. So this says click 4 times. Click. It didn't work. Okay. So
doesn't work. I mean,
work.
I find hot reload to be great when it works, but still not something that I can rely on 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So
it can be a bit flaky, but but yeah. I mean, when it works nicely, and you do have .NET Hot Reload, not just XAML Hot Reload. I find that XAML Hot Reload works more reliably on Mac. And the .NET Code Reload works more reliably on Windows.
Yeah. Okay. So this is pretty simple. We've just spun up a brand new app. Immediately sort of changed a label in the XAML UI portion, and we've changed some .NET code behind it. That's pretty much the default F5 Hello World experience from there.
Yeah, and you've never looked at or written a .NET MAUI app before.
No.
You just looked at this straight away and said, "What if we change this bit of code from X to Y?"
Yeah.
As a .NET developer, you looked at this straight away and thought, "I can change this. I can work with this. I can write."
That's true. Yeah, there was nothing terribly scary in there at all. I guess moving forward from here, this looks very, very simple, very comfortable to me. You did touch on some questions around app shell or what have you, like other methods of structuring the hierarchy of the app. We've got other methods of doing that as well, right? And
yeah.
We'll probably talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So before we finish off, just show me one example here of that .NET MAUI abstraction that we talked about earlier, where we can just drop a button onto the screen and we can see how that renders as a native iOS button or a native Android button or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, look, we've already got a button here. So why don't we pick something else? So if I go between this label here and this button, I can put a different control in.
Put a date picker.
Date picker? Sure.
Yeah, date picker is a great example.
So as someone who's never written a .NET MAUI app before, you just said a date picker, right?
Yep.
You could just come along and you could just write date picker and bang, you've got one. There it is.
Oh, okay.
It's called a date picker. And this is the thing with .NET MAUI, it doesn't matter what that's called on iOS, Android, Windows, or macOS. It could be called date selector, it could be called date time picker. It's not, that's not the point, right? It doesn't matter what it's called because you have, in fact...
And it's intuitive, because that would have been what I would have tried to type straight away, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So hot reload has failed us again, but that's fine. I'm just going to stop this and restart it. And we'll see now that we have a date picker. I guess the same rule applies that if you add or remove things, hot reload doesn't work as reliably as if you change things that are already there.
Yeah.
So we can see here we haven't applied the same UI styles and rules.
That's the ugliest date picker I've ever seen.
But
oh, that's the native iOS date picker, right?
That's the native iOS date picker.
Oh my God, okay.
But we can do some stuff to this. So if we look at all of these, see that there's, if we wanted this to look like, these other ones, without me even telling you, you can probably immediately see what I need to do to position that where the others are.
Absolutely. I'd even straight away also try and copy font size and horizontal options just to see if I could get, the text of that date picker to be a little bit bigger as well.
Okay, well let's do both of those then. So font size 18.
Yep.
In fact, you can see here that before I've even typed 18, we've got an enum of some well-known font sizes available. So you can use a named value from this enum, or you can just type 18 if you want.
Right.
And we'll go horizontal options, center. You can also see that IntelliSense is giving me all of this. So I don't need to know every property and every value by heart. I can just like anything else I do in .NET, I can rely on IntelliSense to give me the answer.
Yeah. Man, many years ago when I did try doing Objective-C to write a native iOS app, I spent 2 hours trying to debug, and it ended up being an incorrect capitalization somewhere in a function because there was no IntelliSense, and at that point I just quit. I was like, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, I would hate to have to do my job without IntelliSense.
Yes. Okay.
Arguably, I would hate to have to do my job because at the moment IntelliSense does it for me. So we see we've still got some issues with hot reload here, but So
yeah, stop and rebuild. Let's see.
Stop and rebuild.
Because I want to see you run this on. Did you say Android will work on iOS?
The Android emulator does work on macOS. I have problems with my specific Android emulator at the moment.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
I can show you this so you can see that we've rebuilt it, and there it is in the middle there. I can show you on Windows this same app running on Windows and on Android. Right now, I can show it to you running on macOS and on iOS, so I can change this here. And so I have got the Android emulator there, but it's kind of not working right now.
Yep. Is that a Mac problem or is that a Mac problem?
It's a Mac problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Android emulator has worked on Mac for years. It's using the same Android emulator that you would use if you were building an Android app using Android Studio.
You broke your emulator.
I broke my emulator, yeah. So this iOS simulator is provided by Xcode.
Okay.
But you can see that .NET MAUI and Visual Studio can hook into that just as easily. And we're going to get the same app, same UI here. And I'm going to be interested actually to see whether we get better luck with hot reload. But you can see we've got the same UI. Hello, Matt. There's the date picker.
Hey, the date time format has changed.
The date time format has changed. You're right. Well spotted.
Why?
Sharp eye. Why? Because, so I can actually specify the date time format. I can explicitly say, I want you to use this date time format. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, it uses whatever the default locale is of your operating system. So because this is my Mac and I use this and it's my actual Mac, it's my actual machine, mm-hmm. I've got the locale set up for us here in Australia. So that's why that looked that way.
But your emulator doesn't respect your OS settings?
So it has its own OS.
Yeah, right. So you have to go and set it.
I haven't localized it in the OS on the simulator because I just don't care.
But what you mean is you like to test multiple date time locales, right? That's
yes, I like to ensure that it works when you have different locales.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right.
But you'll notice that when I click on this shows me an iOS date picker, and I didn't have to change that code and say show it this way on iOS. That's just how it works.
Yeah, right.
And I can click the button, and it will go into the minuses now because we changed that.
Sure
to
does.
minus. I'm interested to see if hot reload will work better on the simulator. So just as a quick test, let's change this to welcome, Matt. Welcome.
Welcomer.
Welcomer. Yeah, so that works nicely there. So that was just a slight Mac OS issue.
Well, just drop another date picker in. Let's see if the emulator works with that. Hey, it does.
I'm going to get rid of that, and I am going to change this to an entry. And when I switch back, we should theoretically see this off to the side. No, there you go. It takes up the whole width.
Oh, okay.
So there's an entry. I can start typing stuff in here, and we can play with that a bit more if we want to.
All
but again, I don't have to know that that on iOS this is called a UI text view. You know, I don't need to know that on Android it's called whatever it's called, and you know, entry, input, whatever. It's just a .NET MAUI entry. There it is.
Yeah,
It's
right.
rendered for me.
Yeah, I get it. So it hides a lot of the distinctions between all of the platforms then, so it makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's great. I want you to show me on Windows though. I'm a Windows boy, I do all of my development on Windows, so I want you to show me and prove to me that it works the same and behaves the same on Windows as well, if you can.
All right, I'll go get a Windows machine and I'll show you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for showing me. I mean, he did prove, guys, that like it's very, very simple to start writing .NET MAUI, you know, from a brand new sort of file, new project experience. And it looks pretty simple. I mean, you know, any .NET developer could start writing this. Yeah, easy peasy. I'm going to drill into some more details in another video because, yeah, there's a lot of other things I want to see have happen. I'm also very excited about that Blazor MAUI app option that I saw before you quickly navigated away, so we'll take a look at that too. We'll cover all of this in a bit more in some other videos, guys, so stick around and see those. Matt Goldman and Luke Cook from SSW TV, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.